My dad and my mother was in the theater, and my father still is in the business. Of course, my mother gave up her career when she married. But, yeah. But they never encouraged me to go in.
In the mid-1960s, Joey Heatherton had Hollywood at her feet. She could sing, dance, act, and command a stage like few performers of her generation. Magazines named her Young Star of the Year, and her movie career looked unstoppable. Then, in 1971, everything changed. A shocking scandal involving her husband, NFL star Lance Rentzel, exploded across the headlines. Suddenly, Joey's name was dragged into a story she never asked for and had absolutely no part in. Within a remarkably short time, the Hollywood doors that had once been opening for Joey began closing. Why did Hollywood seem willing to punish a woman for something her husband had done? This is the shocking story of Joey Heatherton, whose Hollywood dream vanished overnight. The career that looked too perfect to fail. Davani Johanna Heatherton was born on September 14, 1944, in the Long Island community of Rockville Center, New York. From the earliest years of her life, performance was part of the air she breathed. Her father, Ray Heatherton, had already built a respectable career on the Broadway stage and later became a warmly remembered figure on local television as the host of The Merry Mailman. The program ran for years and left a lasting impression on children across the New York metropolitan area. Growing up in a household where entertainment was both a profession and a daily reality, young Joey absorbed the habits of performers almost by instinct. She studied ballet seriously, worked on developing a clear and flexible singing voice, and displayed the kind of natural ease in front of an audience that most people spend years trying to acquire. By the age of 15, she was already working on a major Broadway production. She joined the original company of The Sound of Music as a member of the ensemble and as an understudy. The experience gave her early professional discipline and the chance to observe how a long-running hit show was maintained night after night. National television exposure arrived soon afterward. On The Perry Como Show, she was cast as a lively, slightly star-struck teenager with an obvious crush on the older host. The recurring bit allowed her to display both comic timing and an easy, camera-ready charm. Audiences responded positively, and the appearance introduced her to a much wider public than Broadway alone could reach. As the early 1960s progressed, Joey began moving with increasing confidence between dramatic television roles and feature films. She appeared in episodes of well-regarded series such as Route 66, The Virginian, The Nurses, and Mr. Novak. These parts required more emotional range than the light variety show spots that were also filling her calendar, and she handled them with noticeable poise. Her first significant film role came in 1963 with Twilight of Honor, opposite Richard Chamberlain and Nick Adams. She played a complicated and vulnerable young woman whose presence added real intensity to the story. The following year, she appeared in Where Love Has Gone, sharing the screen with two formidable established stars, Bette Davis and Susan Hayward, in a glossy, high-profile melodrama based on a best-selling novel. Then, in 1965, she starred opposite Troy Donahue in My Blood Runs Cold. The marketing materials for that film openly promoted her as the Young Star of the Year. It was a clear public declaration that the industry saw her as someone with a substantial future in motion pictures. Throughout these years, she continued to strengthen her reputation as a live entertainer. She became a frequent and memorable guest on the major variety programs of the era, including those hosted by Dean Martin and Ed Sullivan. Her dancing was athletic, precise, and unapologetically sensual. It was the kind of movement that made audiences lean forward in their seats. Her singing voice could shift from soft and intimate to strong and projecting within a single phrase. Advertisers recognized her commercial value as well. She appeared in campaigns for RC Cola and, most memorably, became the long-running face of the Certa Perfect Sleeper mattress commercials. Those advertisements, with their carefully calibrated mix of playfulness and quiet seduction, became part of the shared cultural memory of the decade and kept her image familiar long after many of her early films had left theaters. She also spent a significant portion of the mid to late 1960s traveling with Bob Hope on his celebrated USO tours. These included multiple trips to entertain American troops during the Vietnam War. The combination of her talent, her physical presence, and her willingness to perform under difficult and sometimes dangerous conditions made her one of the more memorable entertainers associated with those shows. Soldiers responded to her with open enthusiasm, and the experience further cemented her public image as both glamorous and approachable. By the late 1960s, Joey Heatherton had assembled an unusually strong set of professional credentials for someone still in her early 20s. She had Broadway experience, dramatic film roles opposite major stars, a growing list of television credits, a powerful presence in variety and live performance, and a recognizable commercial profile. Everything about her career suggested that larger and more substantial film opportunities still lay ahead. Then she met Lance Rentzel, and the path that had seemed so clearly marked began to change direction. The marriage that destroyed her perfect image. Lance Rentzel was a talented and highly visible wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He was known for his speed, his ability to make difficult catches in crucial moments, and a personality that thrived on attention and spectacle. He and Joey met in Los Angeles and became engaged after a rapid courtship, lasting only 5 weeks. In April of 1969, they were married at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. Joey was 23 years old. Rentzel was 25. Their wedding received extensive coverage in entertainment and sports media. To much of the public, it looked like an ideal modern American success story. A beautiful young Hollywood performer joining forces with a rising star of professional football. Joey appears to have been deeply invested in the relationship. Contemporary reports and later recollections indicate that she deliberately reduced the intensity with which she pursued film roles in order to focus on her marriage. She continued to appear on television and accept live performance engagements, but the concentrated effort to establish herself as a major film star was set aside. The couple presented themselves as a glamorous pairing living at the intersection of two high-profile worlds. Rentzel clearly enjoyed the attention that came with having a famous and attractive wife at his side, and was frequently described as someone who liked to make a strong impression and seek the spotlight. Beneath the polished public surface, however, serious difficulties already existed. In November of 1970, a little more than a year and a half after the wedding, Rentzel was arrested in Dallas on a charge of indecent exposure involving a 10-year-old girl. The charge was a felony. He posted bond, and the story moved with remarkable speed from local news into national headlines. For a short period, Joey stood by him in public statements, expressing a desire to remain supportive even while acknowledging that she did not fully understand his actions. But the subsequent press investigation made the situation considerably worse. Journalists uncovered an earlier and similar incident that had taken place in October of 1966 in St. Paul, Minnesota. In that case, Rentzel had pleaded guilty and had been ordered by the court to seek psychiatric treatment rather than receive a formal sentence. The revelation of a prior offense transformed the new arrest from what might have been framed as an isolated lapse into evidence of a repeating pattern. Public sympathy for the couple largely evaporated. The once celebrated image of the Hollywood and NFL pairing collapsed under the weight of the disclosures. What had once been presented as a glamorous marriage was now dominated by questions surrounding Rentzel's behavior and the future of the relationship. For Joey, the situation was especially difficult because the scandal was not hers. Yet her marriage to Rentzel placed her directly beside the controversy in the public eye. Their marriage grew difficult as public pressure intensified around them. In the fall of 1971, Joey filed for divorce. The marriage was legally dissolved in 1972. She later described the entire period as one of profound psychological difficulty. A number of people who followed her career closely have suggested that she never completely recovered from the shock of discovering the full extent of her husband's behavior. The marriage had begun as a highly publicized union between two young stars, one from Hollywood and one from professional football. Joey had entered it with enough confidence in the relationship to reduce the intensity of her film ambitions and devote more attention to her life as a wife. Less than 3 years later, that decision existed in the shadow of a scandal she had not caused. What remains beyond any reasonable dispute is that Joey had committed no crime herself. Yet the entertainment industry and the public did not treat the scandal as something entirely separate from her. Because she was Rentzel's wife, his actions became part of the story surrounding her. The marriage that had once seemed to strengthen Joey's glamorous public image had instead become a source of personal turmoil and unwanted scrutiny. And although the full professional consequences would unfold later, the foundation had already been laid. Joey Heatherton's carefully constructed life had been dramatically altered by the actions of the man she had married. The scandal that closed Hollywood's doors. The legal outline of the case was straightforward. Lance Rentzel had exposed himself to a minor. He eventually entered a guilty plea, received a suspended sentence, and was required to undergo psychiatric treatment. The National Football League placed him on the inactive list, and his career as a professional athlete suffered damage. But the damage inflicted on Joey Heatherton's prospects as a film actress proved even more decisive and permanent. In the early 1970s, Hollywood still operated according to a set of strict, if largely unspoken, rules regarding public image and moral association. Certain categories of personal controversy could be survived by male stars if enough time was allowed to pass, and the appropriate public relations efforts were undertaken. A female performer who became publicly linked, even solely through marriage, to a sexual offense involving a child faced a far more unforgiving calculation. Studios grew cautious. Casting directors became reluctant to take perceived risks. The professional momentum that had carried Joey through 3 significant films in the mid-1960s simply stalled and then disappeared. The problem was not that her abilities had suddenly diminished. She could still sing, dance, perform, and draw an audience. What had changed was the way the industry viewed the association surrounding her name. She did appear in one more high-profile feature film during this period, Bluebeard in 1972, co-starring with Richard Burton. The production itself was troubled, and the finished film was both a critical and commercial failure. There remains some uncertainty about the exact timing of the principal photography relative to the height of the Rentzel scandal, but the movie effectively marked the end of her run as a leading actress in major theatrical releases. When she returned to the big screen several years later, it was in the 1977 release The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington, a low-budget, sexually-oriented comedy that few observers regarded as a serious artistic or career advancement. The contrast with her earlier work opposite Bette Davis, Susan Hayward, and Richard Chamberlain was stark and widely noted. Industry commentators at the time observed that if this was the level of material still being offered to her, her days as a conventional movie star were effectively over. At the same time, other professional avenues remained open and continued to thrive. Music proved more receptive. She released the Joey Heatherton album in 1972 and achieved a modest commercial success with the single Gone, which reached number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Live performance remained one of her strongest and most reliable areas of work. She headlined in Las Vegas and shared marquees with established major names such as Tony Bennett. Audiences continued to respond to her singing and dancing with enthusiasm. The Certa Perfect Sleeper commercials kept airing and became embedded in the cultural memory of the decade. she maintained a regular presence on television variety shows and accepted guest appearances. In 1975, she even co-starred with her father in a short-lived CBS summer series titled Joey and Dad. The professional division that emerged was unmistakable and revealing. Music, nightclub work, commercials, and television still had a clear place for Joey Heatherton. Feature films largely did not. The indecent act committed by her husband had not destroyed her fundamental ability to entertain large audiences. It had, however, permanently closed the path of prestige motion picture stardom that had once appeared to be opening before her. For Joey Heatherton, the consequences of the scandal, therefore, went beyond a single lost role or unsuccessful film. They altered the direction of her professional life. The big-screen opportunities that had once suggested a lasting place among Hollywood's leading women were no longer developing. Other stages remained available, but the film stardom she had been building was gone. The tragedy of the situation was that the act responsible for that collapse was not hers. Yet the association was enough to change the industry's calculation. Her talent remained intact, her audiences remained receptive, and her ability to perform never disappeared. What changed was the opportunity to translate those qualities into the kind of major film career that had once seemed almost inevitable. Just when she tried to rebuild, everything got worse. The 1980s brought Joey Heatherton a different and more difficult set of challenges. By this point, the extraordinary momentum of her earlier career had largely disappeared, but she did not simply walk away from performing. She continued to rely primarily on music and cabaret appearances as the core of her professional activity. Live performance remained one of the areas where she could still draw on the talents that had made her famous in the first place. Television also provided occasional opportunities. She made a memorable guest appearance on the popular situation comedy Laverne and Shirley in an episode titled Night at the Awards. Appearances such as this allowed her to remain visible to audiences, but substantial film roles and significant dramatic television work remained scarce. The industry had largely moved on. The performers, trends, and expectations that dominated Hollywood in the 1960s had changed, while the association with the earlier scandal continued to influence how many decision-makers viewed Heatherton's name. Her professional reputation was no longer defined solely by her abilities as a singer, dancer, and actress. The controversies surrounding her personal life increasingly became part of the public conversation about her. Her personal life grew more turbulent during the decade as well. In 1985, she was arrested following an altercation at a Manhattan passport office. A clerk alleged that Heatherton had slapped her and pulled her hair during a dispute over the processing of travel documents. Heatherton maintained that she had been mishandled by security personnel. The incident led to a civil lawsuit. After a trial, a jury awarded the clerk a relatively modest sum on a negligence claim while rejecting the more serious assault allegations. The legal outcome was considerably more complicated than the headlines might have suggested. But the incident nevertheless generated another round of unwanted publicity around Heatherton. That same year, she faced a separate legal matter involving an unpaid hotel and spa bill of nearly $5,000. Then, in 1986, she was arrested once again after an argument with her former boyfriend and manager, Jerry Fisher. During the confrontation, she stabbed him in the hand with a steak knife. Fisher later dropped the assault charge. A small quantity of substance was discovered in her possession at the time of the arrest, but that charge was ultimately dismissed on technical grounds. Taken together, these incidents generated fresh rounds of tabloid coverage and reinforced a public narrative of personal instability and volatility. For a performer who was already struggling to regain meaningful traction in the film industry, the new legal problems made any substantial professional recovery considerably more difficult. Each new controversy created another layer between Heatherton and the image of the polished young star who had once seemed destined for major Hollywood success. Yet she continued working when opportunities appeared. Music and live performance remained available to her, even if the scale and visibility of those opportunities were far removed from the level she had enjoyed during the height of her fame. The bright, upward-moving career arc of the 1960s now felt like a distant and increasingly unreachable memory. A small but significant opportunity arrived in 1990 when director John Waters cast Heatherton in a supporting role as a religious fanatic in his cult musical comedy Cry Baby. The part was limited in screen time, but it represented a rare return to a theatrical film with genuine cultural visibility. Waters had long shown an interest in performers whose public images carried complexity, notoriety, or controversy, and Heatherton fit that pattern. Her appearance demonstrated that she could still attract interest from filmmakers willing to look beyond the conventional Hollywood system. However, the role did not lead to a renewed sequence of film offers. Opportunities remained limited and infrequent. Then, in 1997, at the age of 53, Heatherton appeared in a nude pictorial in Playboy magazine. The decision was widely interpreted as an attempt to generate renewed attention and possibly reopen professional doors that had long been closed. The appearance attracted attention, but it produced little lasting career benefit. That same year, her father, Ray Heatherton, passed away. The coincidence of timing prompted unfortunate speculation and dark commentary in certain corners of the press, although there was never any evidence of a causal connection between the two events. By the end of the decade, Joey Heatherton's career had become a story of persistence amid setbacks. She had continued performing despite years of professional disappointment, legal troubles, and intense public scrutiny. The opportunities were no longer what they had once been, but she had never completely disappeared from the entertainment world. Her story had entered a far more complicated chapter, one in which simply remaining visible had become an achievement in itself. The career Hollywood took from her. One of the most significant and least thoroughly examined aspects of Joey Heatherton's story is the double standard that shaped the entertainment industry's response to the scandal surrounding her marriage. Lance Rentzel's crime was serious and fully deserved strong public condemnation. His actions involved a child, and the consequences he faced were justified by the seriousness of what he had done. Yet the professional price was paid disproportionately by the woman who divorced him and who had no personal involvement in the offense. Joey Heatherton did not commit the crime, participate in it, or cause it. Her connection to the controversy existed through her marriage alone. Nevertheless, that association became powerful enough to alter the way the industry perceived her and, ultimately, the opportunities available to her. Male performers of the same era frequently survived damaging personal controversies and, after a period of time, returned to major work. Their professional identities could often be separated from their private misconduct. The passage of time, changing public attention, and effective public relations efforts could create a path back into mainstream entertainment. Female performers who became linked, even indirectly and solely through marriage, to sexual scandals often faced a different reality. Certain categories of opportunity could close permanently. The public image of a woman could be transformed by circumstances over which she had no control, and the distinction between her own conduct and that of the person she married could become blurred. Heatherton's experience stands as a particularly clear illustration of how quickly a woman's professional identity could be rewritten by the actions of a man she had once trusted and married. Before the scandal, she had been viewed as a promising young performer with the combination of beauty, musical ability, dancing talent, and television experience necessary to build a substantial film career. Afterward, those qualities had not disappeared. What changed was the context in which the industry viewed her. Another element that deserves substantially more attention is the remarkable durability of her talent outside the film industry. While major studios largely turned away, nightclub audiences and television viewers continued to respond with genuine enthusiasm to her energy, vocal ability, and physical presence on stage. The Certa commercials alone kept her image familiar to millions of ordinary viewers for years, after the scandal had faded from the front pages. Her continued visibility through advertising, television, and live performance demonstrated that audiences had not simply rejected her. People were still willing to watch her, listen to her, and respond to the qualities that had made her famous. Her Las Vegas performances demonstrated repeatedly that the core qualities that had first brought her to national attention had not disappeared or diminished. She remained capable of commanding a stage and entertaining an audience. The genuine loss, therefore, was not that Joey Heatherton stopped working as an entertainer. She did not. She continued performing and finding professional opportunities in areas where audiences and producers remained receptive to her. The genuine loss was that the specific path of sustained high-level feature film work, the path that had been opening so promisingly in the mid-1960s, was closed to her by association rather than by any measurable decline in ability or audience appeal. That distinction matters because it changes the way her career should be understood. Her story is not simply one of a star who rose quickly and then faded. It is the story of a performer whose professional possibilities were narrowed by circumstances outside her own conduct. The fact that she continued to work in other areas makes the contrast even more striking. There is also the quieter and more private later chapter of her life. After the Playboy pictorial and the small role in Crybaby, Joey Heatherton largely withdrew from public view. More recent accounts describe her living a deliberately private life in the Los Angeles area, occasionally observed handling ordinary daily activities. Unlike a number of her contemporaries, she has not pursued a high-profile late-career media return, a carefully managed public reinvention, or a series of nostalgic interviews designed to reshape her narrative. That deliberate quiet has itself become part of the larger story. A performer who once filled stages, television screens, and magazine covers with vibrant, almost kinetic energy, eventually chose to remain mostly outside the frame. Her absence from the public spotlight can be viewed as another indication of just how dramatically the trajectory of her life and career changed. What was lost was not talent. It was a possibility. The possibility of seeing how far Joey Heatherton might have gone had her professional identity been allowed to develop independently of a scandal she did not create. What Joey Heatherton left behind. Joey Heatherton's career is often told as a simple story. A young star had a bright future. A scandal happened, and everything fell apart. But that version leaves out a lot. Joey was much more than someone who became famous and then disappeared. She was a talented entertainer who could sing, dance, act, perform live, and connect with audiences on television and in commercials. Before the scandal changed the direction of her career, Joey had already accomplished a lot. She had appeared in films, performed on major television shows, released music, worked in nightclubs, and become a familiar face through television commercials. She had proven that she could succeed in several different parts of the entertainment world. The scandal involving her husband did not erase everything she had achieved. It also did not stop people from wanting to see her perform. Joey continued finding work in music, television, live performances, and commercials for years afterward. What changed was the kind of work she was being offered. Her movie career had been moving in a promising direction. She had already worked with major actors and had the kind of visibility that could have helped her become a much bigger film star. But after the scandal, that path became much harder to follow. The opportunities that might have helped her become a long-term Hollywood movie star largely disappeared. That is an important part of Joey's story because it shows that she did not suddenly lose her talent. She could still sing, she could still dance, she could still act. People could still enjoy watching her perform. What changed was how the entertainment industry viewed her. Her story also shows something uncomfortable about Hollywood during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Public image mattered enormously, especially for women. A performer could become connected to a scandal even when she had done nothing wrong herself. In Joey's case, her connection came through the man she had married. Lance Rentzel's actions damaged his own reputation and football career, but they also changed the direction of Joey's professional life. The only clear mistake she had made was choosing the wrong person to marry at a very difficult point in her life. Even today, Joey's work has not completely disappeared. Recordings and old television clips continue to find new viewers. Footage of her dancing on major variety shows from the 1960s still shows why audiences were so impressed by her. She had energy, confidence, and a natural ability to command attention. The Certa Perfect Sleeper commercials are another part of her lasting legacy. Decades later, people still remember those advertisements and the image Joey created in them. John Waters' Crybaby has also helped keep her face familiar to new audiences. Her earlier films remain available for people who want to watch her work and judge her talent for themselves. We can never know exactly how far Joey's movie career would have gone if the scandal had never happened. Maybe she would have become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Maybe her career would have taken another unexpected turn. But one thing is clear: the talent was real. And even after Hollywood moved on, Joey Heatherton kept performing. That resilience is a part of her legacy that the scandal could never erase. Joey Heatherton had everything Hollywood seemed to want: talent, beauty, fame, and a growing list of major opportunities. Then, one scandal involving her husband changed the course of her career. Even though she had committed no crime herself, was she simply caught in the fallout of the wrong marriage? Or did Hollywood hold her to a completely different standard? Her story still leaves us with questions. What do you think really ended Joey's movie career? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more.